It's going to be available on our website and it's going to be sent out to everybody who's registered for this session. So just to let you know about that, you can expect to receive it probably within a couple of days. Um, any other housekeeping notes? Tomorrow we have another session that hopefully you'll be able to join us for. It's all about your benefit plans and it's being hosted by Student VIP. And then as you probably know, our last session is on Thursday. Well, maybe not our last one. We're still trying to get together one for Durham, which we haven't confirmed the date and time for, but hopefully that's going to be in the next couple of weeks too. But Thursday is our official orientation with the provost, the research office, the TGSA, many important different people and departments are going to be there, official welcome and give you important information for starting out at Trent as a graduate student. So before I throw it over to Nona Robinson, the Associate Vice President of Students, I just want to do a quick little land acknowledgement to acknowledge this land that we benefit from living and learning and teaching on every day. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Anishinaabe. We offer our gratitude to our First Nations for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations. May we honor these teachings. Okay, and I think you're all set up here to go, Nona. So I think I'll just throw it over to you for a quick introduction and go ahead.
Great, thank you, Lori, and welcome everyone. I see we've got a reasonable number of folks joining in. I don't know if you are people who went to undergrad at Trent or at a different institution. So if you feel like just sharing information like that in the chat at any point, just do so. So if you want to share where you went to undergrad in the chat, that would be fabulous. So give me a sense of who's joining us. And a little bit about me. I've been at Trent for 9 years. Before that, I was working at one of the colleges at the University of Toronto. So I sort of do all things student service. I oversee housing and food services and counseling and health services and First People's House of Learning and student accessibility services and so on and so forth. I also work very closely with student leaders. So I meet regularly with the Trent Graduate Student Association, among others. And I also do various things like orientation and student leadership programming and training for staff, faculty, and students around the various sorts of student support skills and things like that. So it's not a dull job, there's no question, but I work with some amazing people at Trent, and if you're new to Trent, I really hope that you find that everyone is here to help you. I want to just sort of talk a little bit about the Trent experience. For those of you who haven't been in Trent before, someone went to U of T. Great. Justin, maybe tell me which college you were at, or you were at Scarborough UTM. And Jillian was at Laurentian. Good for you, Jillian. And Brock, great. So Trent, for the Peterborough campus, at least, you know, I throw up pictures like this and people are like, ooh, it's beautiful. It is beautiful, although I will say that the beauty in January is more appreciated in terms of, in theory, because it gets a little bit chilly, especially when you're crossing the bridge, because there can be a howling wind coming down the autonomy. But, you know, Trent's still quite a small campus. And, you know, I think one of the advantages for us with that is that we can really provide a very personalized student experience. And at the graduate level, of course, you'll be working very closely with your faculty supervisor, with other graduate students. And if you're TAing or doing research, then you'll be probably working with undergrads as well. And so, you know, establishing those social connections can be extremely valuable because that really helps you have a sense of place, have a sense of that you belong here, because obviously you do. And I love Trent. You know, I loved many aspects about the University of Toronto, but you know, Trent is for me a very, very special place. Among other things, you know, whenever I need help with some sort of program or initiative to do with supporting students, I send it an email and I get more volunteers than I know what to do with. There's a real culture here of people looking out for each other, people working collaboratively and as opposed to competitively. And, you know, it can be very, very warm and supportive. I think corollary of that is I think a lot of people come to Trent who feel that they might need a little bit of extra support. So among other things, when we survey our students around mental health issues, we see that many more of our students identify as struggling with potentially with mental health issues. They've been diagnosed or treated for it. We also see that and I'm very proud of this in terms of our accessibility, but about 75–80% of our students are on OSAP every year, which is one of the highest in the province. So, we have a very diverse student body and diverse in terms of what their needs are. And that goes for graduate students as well. But the other thing, of course, is if you're TAing, we want to make sure that you feel supported and that you know where to go to help if you see that any of your undergraduate students are struggling. I've got the slideshow up for now because I've got a few different picture type things, but then I'm going to take it down and we'll just talk about student services in general. So basically done the intro. I do want to update you on what's going on with COVID planning because it changes really fast, and it's changed recently this week, and I know folks have questions about that. I want to talk a little bit about common challenges fairly unique to graduate students and some of the things that we can do to support you in that, some of the different student services, the resources and referrals. Talk a little bit about when things go wrong and what's available to help with you. And I do want to note that we will be talking about things like mental illness and sexual violence with a focus primarily on prevention and support resources, but just wanted to give you a heads up. And if at any point you have questions, please put them in the Q&A. If there's any information you think it's useful for me to know about you in the chat, either one works for me. As well, if you want copies of the slide deck particularly, feel free to email me. Okay. So in terms of COVID planning, it's what now, 18 months into the pandemic. We, as everyone else, last March shut down and did a lightning fast switch to remote learning. And then this past year, while the Peterborough in particular has generally had significantly lower case numbers than many other jurisdictions, we still have had to sort of shift from some in person to all online, to back to some in person, to back to all online throughout this past year. We did keep our residences open, although they were quite restricted and we didn't have any doubles for students and things like that. We did have labs that stayed open, some particular programs and placements stayed open, but there's no question it was a bit of a struggle. Many good things came out of it. However, one of the things was for me that really sort of drove home was, with the shift for all of our services to virtual. For example, if they're seeking counseling or they have anxiety and they don't want to walk into an office, they can just consult with someone through Zoom, and that can make a huge difference in terms of the access for services. So that's been a really positive thing, and so we're going to continue to offer many of our services through virtually as well as in person. And in case, as long as we have a mask mandate, things like counseling will probably be staying mostly virtual, simply because it's difficult to counsel someone if you can't see their face. We did just announce last week that we are requiring people to be vaccinated, 2 doses by September 7th. One of the reasons we're confident that the majority of students and faculty and staff will be able to do that is because we did do a survey which had a tremendous response rate. It was well over half of our population answered this survey. I think we all wanted to win an iPad. Our vaccination rates are extremely high in terms of full vaccines, which I find very encouraging. One of the other reasons for the vaccine mandate, obviously we want people to be protected, and especially if they have vulnerable family members or if they themselves are immunocompromised. But we are also hoping that we'll be able to have fewer occupancy restrictions so that we can continue to have those in-person classes and activities, because that's such a big and important part of what we do. We are providing the option for exceptions. We'll probably be communicating that out in the next day or two in terms of how to apply for an exception and things like that. Anybody who's not fully vaccinated, either because they're waiting to get their second shot or because they've requested an accommodation, will be needing to get regular testing. So, we really want to make the campus as safe for everybody as possible. Folks have questions about that, please feel free to put that in the Q&A. As well, encourage people to continue to check out the Trent Forward website. That's the place where any updates are provided. Various emails do go out with some frequency. Some of them get signed by me, some of them are signed by the president, some of them are from communications. We do want to try and make sure that people are up to date as to what's going on, although I recognize that sometimes people sort of skim emails and may not catch all the details. So we do want to continue to communicate as much as possible. We also, of course, are doing contingency planning. What happens if we have to start virtually, or if we have to, switch from in person to online. International students who got vaccinated with the WHO-approved vaccination will be treated as vaccinated. Yes, yeah, we had some discussion about that, and particularly for our international students who are coming in, we want to make sure that if they've been vaccinated, you'll still need to quarantine. But the Trent International Office is a great resource for any questions you have with that. Okay, I see Shyla did undergrad at Trent. That's great. Okay, so starting graduate work. I got a master's and PhD while I was working full-time at the University of Toronto from OISE. It was fun. It was sometimes challenging. Time management was a bit of a struggle. Procrastination was a really big struggle. And so, there's pros and cons to being a graduate student. I loved it, probably more than I loved my undergrad, but there's no question, particularly when you get beyond the coursework and you're doing your research and writing, that it can be a bit difficult. So some anxieties that are specific to graduate students include not liking the program or supervisor. So many of you did an undergraduate degree and are going into graduate school with a much more specialized topic area, and maybe you have expectations about it, but those don't necessarily get sort of fulfilled. My hope is that you love your supervisor, and I can't attest to the fact that the vast majority of Trent faculty are just wonderful people. But if there's any sort of problems or issues with your supervisor, we're here to help with that. We can mediate problems or concerns, and the graduate student office is probably your best first stop to try and get support on that. Sometimes people worry about isolation, which I just already mentioned, especially if you're starting from a different undergrad school, meeting new people. You'll be obviously in classes meeting other graduate students, but how do you meet other people of similar interest? Often at this point, you're probably interested in getting involved in your community. And so what sort of volunteer work is out there? Maybe you're working as well. And so, connecting in terms of your jobs and so on. All of those things are really great ways to start building those connections if you just moved here. But one of the things when you're writing your research is to make sure that you maintain those connections, because it is easy to just sort of focus solely on that. And having that balance is really important. Some folks who haven't been a teaching assistant before might be concerned about that. We do have TA training support, and I'll talk about also the student support certificate. But I know, for example, that graduate students might worry, well, what do I do if a student comes to me with a really serious problem? What do I say to them? Where do I get help for them? What about teaching? I mean, I was never taught before in some cases, and how am I going to manage that? And how do I sort of do what I really want to be doing as a TA in terms of motivating and inspiring students? And so one of the things often that for teaching is to sort of think about who your favorite instructors were and what they did that was really inspiring for you. And our Center for Teaching and Learning has excellent teaching resources, including for online teaching as well as in person. So there's lots of supports available for through that. I did talk about finding a community. There's lots of different ways to get involved at Peterborough and also at Trent. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. And people are also concerned sometimes about being away from their support systems. So sometimes if you move from farther away to come here, it's a little easier now than maybe it was 30 years ago, because you can always text and Zoom and all those other sorts of things, but it's not quite the same. So maintaining your connections with your support systems and developing new ones. So developing support systems, particularly amongst your fellow students. As I said, the culture at Trent is very much that we look out for each other, and I hope that's your experience as well. Sometimes, of course, people have individual issues that, work-life balance, maybe you have family responsibilities, maybe there's the kind of things you're struggling with. And again, that's what we're here to help with. So I think sometimes students, graduate students will think, okay, well, student services are there for undergrads. They're not there for graduate students. That's not the case. Our student services work extensively with graduate students as well as undergrads. And the message that we send very strongly to undergrads is the earlier you seek help, the more manageable a problem is. And the same thing goes for graduate students. And I think for some of us, especially if we're sort of like moving on to that next level of our lives and try to feel strong and independent, all those other sorts of things, asking for help can actually be very difficult. But certainly what we see is that people who are able to identify problems that they have early on and just get some help strategizing how to move through those, that can make an enormous difference before it gets to a crisis state. So I know Laurie has circulated the campus resources and services sheet. I just wanted to throw that up there just so that you see it. It's basically there. We sort of created it just to sort of categorize the different services. We also have all the services listed at the current student's website. So, you don't have to remember all the different services. You just need to remember that they're there. And, if you're sort of like, I'm not sure who to talk to, often the very best person to start with in that case is your college office. And so many of you will be trail students as graduate students. Some of you who went to Trent before might be affiliated with another college. But your college offices have academic advising and academic skills instructors in them, and they know the services inside out, so they can do a really fast referral for you. I find too this is helpful when you're working with undergrads, just to have a few copies of this, because if a student's sort of like, oh, I don't know where to go, or I don't know who to talk to, you can just basically circle what service you think would be appropriate for them, hand it to them, and then they've got that resource handy. Any questions so far? Yes, the slide can be emailed to attendees. And Laurie, I think you were distributing the campus resources and services sheet as well, right?
Yeah, so when I send out the recording of this event, I can also send this PDF as well to everybody, but it is posted right now on our orientation website, but I can definitely email it out as well.
I'm going to drop the slideshow because, after a year, I've been teaching as well through this, and I'm sort of like, okay, well, the second I put the slides up, nobody sees me. So we'll just switch to something hopefully a little more personal. Going through some of the other resources, I mentioned the student support certificate. So there's departments and faculty will do some work in terms of preparing you as a TA anyway. But the student support certificate is something that we developed at Trent, available for faculty and staff, and that includes graduate students who are TAing. What the idea with this is to give you sort of a core group of skills and resources that will help you if there's any sorts of issues that you're dealing with in terms of supporting students. And of course, many people who do these sessions also find it very useful for themselves. So in this case, I teach both student development theory and also conflict resolution. I particularly enjoy the conflict resolution session because usually someone says, "Ooh, I'm going to use this at home with my partner," or whatever. So we talk also about diversity, equity, inclusion, referrals and resources, including campus tours of the different resources. We talk about how to advise students who are struggling academically. We've got a whole bunch of different types of mental health training, including suicide prevention. And we have sexual violence prevention. We have information about supporting students with disabilities, Indigenous students, international students, issues of multi-faith, all of the positive space, long list of different sessions. So I do encourage you to check that out. And we have been offering these virtually recently, and I've been finding the attendance actually has gone up, if anything, because it's actually easier for people to just attend to it. I do know that in terms of student success factors, your motivation, your self-confidence, your sense of connection with the campus, self-reliance, the development of the necessary academic skills that you have, including transitioning from undergrad to graduate academic expectations, as well as early identification of issues and help seeking. All of those things contribute to success at the graduate level. So I'm hopeful that makes a big difference for you. One of the other things I think sometimes that can happen for all of us, and especially sometimes I think in graduate school where there's a certain amount of intensity, is we might forget that we're actually really good at things. And we don't actually maybe want to talk about that. But there's a branch of counseling psychology called strengths-based counseling, and which I really appreciate. And I've seen it work really well with folks, because each of us has different strengths. And for someone, it might be excellent time management. For someone, it might be that they're very outgoing and they make friends easily. For someone else, it might be that they tend to be organized. Or for someone else, it might be that they can just read something and retain it and then be able to talk about it immediately afterwards. So given that each of us has those strengths, how do those strengths then translate into being successful? So I would ask you to think, what are maybe 3 things you know that you're really good at? And then how does that help you succeed in graduate work? And then if you want to, write it down and put it in a poster or something like that next to your computer, just so if you're running into some difficulties or some challenges, you can just sort of say, yeah, you know what, I'm actually really good at this. It just helps rebuild your self-confidence if you're struggling a little bit. That can make an enormous difference for folks. So, and that is something that I think often our counselors will do, working on with students when you're sort of strategizing how to work through a problem. Because, for example, if you're really good with organization and you're feeling overwhelmed, that person might do well by making lists and various sorts of things like that. But someone else who's actually just really good at talking through what their problem is might do better when they're having a conversation with a peer or with a counselor. I did mention the Current Students website lists all the different services. I strongly recommend that's a very good first stop for you. It's trentu.ca/current students, all one word. And I'll just sort of go through what some of those different resources are. Academic supports, I think, are a big thing that we probably all want help with. Obviously, your individual faculty members and your academic department will probably be your first stop when you're running into any sort of questions academically. And of course, at the graduate level, you will hopefully have a very close relationship with your faculty members. Graduate studies. Great place to go if you just want to talk about something that you need help with, or various things like that. Similar to your college office, they can also do referrals. They can also help with planning what your courses are, any of those sorts of things, as well as with things like financial aid. I did mention that we have academic advisors in every college. They are familiar with graduate work as well as undergraduate work. They can advise on any challenges that you're having, academic pathways, any forms or petitions that you might need to fill, all those sorts of things. And academic skills are also in each college. And they do thesis writing, they do retreats for writing, which are very popular. They'll advise on research, citations, a long list of sorts of things, and they have great online resources, a whole long list of them. In fact, I was teaching a graduate course at OISE a few years ago, and one of my students actually said, I tried to find this information on the U of T website, couldn't, but then I went to the Trent website and there it was. I'm like, oh, that's helpful, excellent. Also, your fellow students are great academic supports. You've got other folks who are hopefully very passionate about what they're learning, very interested in sharing that information. Study groups work well at grad level as well as undergrad, and certainly writing support groups can be really powerful because it helps with that mutual compatibility, and that makes an enormous difference for folks. Do want to mention our careers, career spaces in the Student Center. Again, this is something that I wish more graduate students would take advantage of, because they have, again, some really great resources and some really great supports. And I think for a lot of graduate students, there is a little bit of anxiety because you're sort of heading into graduate work. And maybe you want an academic career, which is great. And maybe you're sort of like, okay, well, a master's or PhD is going to be necessary, and this other thing that I want to do. But people do change jobs and even careers with some frequency. So what are your transferable skills? Getting a master's or PhD means you know how to write, for example. You know how to, at a very high level, to be able to critically think and do research and all of those sorts of things. So being able to translate those when you're looking for jobs outside of academia can be really, really valuable. Many of you will probably be working while you're doing graduate work, although, again, you want to have some balance around that. But what are some other things that you might want to do with your degree if you decide that an academic career is not for you, or even just exploring what some options are. So I do encourage you to check out Career Space because it can be very helpful in those questions. Financial supports, getting through graduate school without sort of accumulating a lot of debt can be challenging. As I mentioned, people do work. I think generally speaking, for undergrad and for grad, we sort of say 10 to 15 hours a week is probably what you want to be shooting for. More than that's probably going to be impinging on what you're doing. And of course, if you're able to get a TA-ship or a research assistantship, that can make a big difference as well. Obviously, student aid program, bursaries, scholarships, emergency loans. If you've got questions about any of that, then the Graduate Studies Office is a great place to start, as well as the Financial Aid Office. Student supports or social supports, so it can help get you connected at the Graduate Student Association. Again, great place to start. These are folks who are very deeply committed to Trent and the graduate student experience, and they do various activities, and obviously they also run various services. So in conjunction with the Undergraduate Student Association, they run the health plan, and they have, again, various bursaries and conference bursaries and various things like that. So lovely people to get in touch with, and to hopefully even get involved with the Graduate Student Association. College and department activities, there's always stuff going on. So I mentioned that many, if not most of you, will be Trail College members. So connect with Michael Eamon because he loves talking with students, and he's very supportive. But you know, students can go to any of the college events. So really just sort of see what's happening, and try and get to stuff. And each of your departments will be doing different activities, guest speakers, lectures, all of those sorts of things. So get connected with those as well. Graduate students are welcome to join any of our clubs and levy groups, and there's a whole wide range of them. That's on this, the TCSA website, and our clubs and groups day is on the Wednesday following orientation. And so all of these, both the university and the students run a whole range of different events. If anything, there's a bit of an options paralysis because there's so much going on. So really think about what it is that you would like to do for fun to get connected with people, and maybe try and get out to one event or activity a week. I think that's usually a very good goal for folks. And then of course, hanging with friends, especially as you make more of them in your program. I did want to talk also about BIPOC student supports. We also have LGBTQ plus student supports. So we have a Black student support group. Again, graduate students are very welcome. We have a BIPOC counselor in counseling services. We also have First Peoples House of Learning, which is actually open to all students, including sacred spaces, but is programming particularly intended to support Indigenous students. So if people self-identify through their application, but they can also self-identify directly with FPHL. So they're over near and in Zosky College or Wayne College. They have a gathering space for students, which is open almost all the time unless there's an activity or event taking place. They also have some traditional areas just beyond Zosky College, as well as down in Durham. So teepees on both campuses, medicine garden. We have very close connections with the local First Nations communities, including working very closely with elders and knowledge keepers, many of whom do work at Trent or do lectures at Trent. We also provide a range of cultural programming and cultural counseling for Indigenous students, especially Indigenous students who are sort of reclaiming identity. There's for Indigenous students financial support, especially sometimes navigating the combination between student loans and band funding, as well as academic advising, tutoring, and student mentorship. So there's a lot of supports for Indigenous and other BIPOC students. LGBT plus students, we again have some specialized counseling services support, including a trans support group, as well as a group called Out on Campus, which is similar to the Black Student Support Group. It's run by students and with support from our staff, as well as the Trent Queer Collective is a very active student group. Physical health is something that, you know, sometimes we might let slide a little bit, especially if we're spending all our time in front of the computer. So in Peterborough, we have our health services. They've been instrumental in helping out with this past year in terms of advising around the pandemic and testing. But in so-called normal times, they're actually more of a sort of primary healthcare clinic, like a drop-in clinic, except, you know, they do ask for appointments. So anything you would get at your doctor's office or primary care clinic is available through there, and they can also do referrals. Athletic centers, both in Peterborough and in Durham. So in Peterborough, that's the athletic centers just north of Blackburn Hall, just south of the library. And in Durham, it's just across the road. It's in partnership with the Durham Civic Center. And so, you know, a lot of different activities there. Again, we've been trying really hard to keep this going during the pandemic, even if we've been restricted to who can come in, although we've managed to open up quite a bit. So online fitness support, some in-person fitness activities, classes, intramurals, varsity sports, that's all there. And again, this is very open to graduate students. And then of course, food services. And you can load up money on your Trent card and use that anywhere on campus, as well as with many of our downtown partners. I find sometimes people might overload on Starbucks because you can run through quite a lot of money buying Starbucks drinks. But we do have a very active food services committee, which is majority students, and because everybody's got an opinion about food. And so we're really trying to balance, ensuring that there's lots of different options, vegan, gluten-free, vegetarian, and for any other kind of dietary needs that people have, as well as healthy options, although pizza still sells quite well. I do want to do a little shout out to the Seasoned Spoon in particular, which is in Champlain College. It's a student-run, student-levy group, and they serve vegetarian and vegan food, and most of what they serve is actually grown on campus, which is so cool. So definitely worth checking out. Mental health and accessibility services. Mental health is another, as I mentioned at the start, an issue that various people might struggle with. And sometimes it's a little bit cyclical. So the most common mental health concerns for students are around stress and anxiety, and also depressive episodes. But of course, between 18 and 25 is also when many other major mental health issues might start to manifest themselves. So again, the earlier any sort of issues can be caught and supported, the more likely it is that they'll become manageable. But we do know that many of our students arrive on campus having already been diagnosed with a mental health issue. And we're very aware of this and very, very keen to support you. So our counseling center takes what we call the stepped approach. So we really do try and have people seen ideally within one business day. And then most times we're able to do that. Start of the year can be a little bit hectic, and also towards the end of each semester around exams, when people really are starting to get super stressed out. But generally speaking, we try and for people's first visit to counseling, get them to see a counselor almost right away. And that first session is not just sort of like filling out forms. It's also talking through what are some immediate needs, what are some longer term needs, what are some resources that would be helpful for you, and just basically streaming people into the resource that's going to be most supportive for them. So that peer support, we have therapeutic virtual support, both through our counseling center and also through other resources. Individual therapy. Sometimes we'll also facilitate a specialist consultation or a community referral. And in some cases, we'll be working on crisis management with a student if they're in a difficult situation. So again, really focused on trying to see students as quickly as possible as a sort of just-in-time type thing, because we know that the longer students have to wait for mental health support, the more likely it is to get worse. And we want to try and do what we can to prevent that. Our accessibility services office is under the same umbrella as counseling services and health services, and we really do try and sort of tie them all together because obviously students will sometimes be going from one to the other in terms of their needs, and a very large portion of our accommodations are for mental health concerns, as well as obviously for learning disabilities and physical disabilities. So what we ask students to do is to meet with an accessibility advisor, work through what sort of accommodations they might need, and then take it from there. So both of those resources are, of course, again, available for graduate students. I do want to talk about sexual assaults, both prevention and response. We have a sexual violence prevention and response coordinator who basically is there for any student who's experienced either historical or recent sexual violence. We have strong partnerships in Peterborough, the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center, and in Durham, the Durham Rape Crisis Center, including contracting them to do sexual violence counseling for us. We really focus as much as possible on prevention and enthusiastic consent. So all of our undergraduate students are asked to take a consent education training. We also try and ensure that students are given the tools to be able to intervene if they see something that's problematic. But if someone has experienced sexual violence, then we really try and take very much of a complainant, survivor-centered process. And so for some survivors, they want to help reporting to the police. Others might want something a little bit more reparative. Others might want us to speak to the respondent and sort of say, we need you to keep away from this person, various sorts of things like that. So there's a range of different options that we can provide support for. My wish and hope is that this is not something that you have to deal with, but very much we want to try and ensure that people are supported in that. So that was a very fast run through of a bunch of services. Does anyone have any questions? You can put them in the Q&A or the chat. I know it looks like Lori's been.
Yeah, I've just answered a couple there, Nona.
Yeah.
I can just add a couple quick things. Nona mentioned Michael Eman. He has popped into our first session, and he will be on our final session again on Thursday. As she said, he is loves the students and always willing to talk. So that was a great thing to mention. And then the GTAs as well. We did have our GTA session last week. And as we mentioned in that session, I will be linking hopefully today the information from the CTL website, because they're just about to post their graduate teaching certificate information, which I believe they said is going to be on September the 10th from 9:30 to 12:30. So anybody who wants to sign up for that, all the details will be posted on their website, and I'll link it to our orientation website. So yeah, and all the information from our GTA session, if you missed it last week, will be posted as well, if it's not already. So yeah, just to follow up on those little points.
We don't expect you to remember all of this stuff either. The information, and you know that's the worst problem with orientation, is you can sometimes get a bit of information overload. The key for me is the student services chart, just to remind yourself that all these things exist, and that graduate students do benefit from student services, and early help seeking is a really, really valuable thing. If you are running into any sort of problems and you just want someone to talk to, feel free to email me directly. Always happy to speak with students. And everybody hits a wall at some point for various reasons. And so we're all here to help. Certainly Lori is as well. And I see in the Q&A, someone saying, thanks friends, answering all of my questions. That's what we're here for. We don't want you to struggle alone. We want you to feel like you're part of a supportive community.
Yes.
So I'm not seeing any further questions.
No. Oh, there's one about vaccines. You want to take that?
Proof of vax required. So someone got vaccinated in the US. What we're doing is we're asking people to upload their vaccine receipts, which could just be a screenshot or a picture of a vaccine receipt. So if you, and I'm sure, I think each state is different in terms of what they provide. But I think people can also, at least in Ontario, go online to the vaccine website and get proof of it through that. So basically, whatever documentation you were provided with should be. Or did you have anything to add on that one?
I don't think so. So how do they provide that? I don't know that process. Who do they send that to? Or
we are developing that process.
Okay.
So IT has been working feverishly to figure it out. We're probably going to do it either through my Trent little app or through the screening app.
Right. Okay.
Because you log into this through my Trent, so it's you, and then there's the option to upload a picture of your vaccine receipt. Or an attestation form if you're choosing not to be vaccinated. So we've been developing that as well. But all will be explained hopefully within the next couple of days for that.
Great. And then so even if you're double vax, students, staff, everybody still fills out the daily screening. Is that correct? That's
at least for now.
I read. Yeah,
yes.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, and we're still going to be needing masks in terms of that. Again, we're I think both the government and also the university, we're trying very hard to be cautious, but at the same time we want people to be able to return to campus, and so anything that's going to jeopardize that, we're going to be trying to. And Lori, I think the next question is for you.
Yes, Rakesh, yes, Thursday session will probably be about an hour, maybe even a little bit less, but I wouldn't guess that it will go longer than an hour. So yeah. Is there any other questions, or has Nona done such a great job in giving you a great overview? Nothing more. Oh, there we go. Is there a campus?
Yes, you can wander around campus right now. The buildings are unlocked. Make sure you do your screening app before you come to this, because otherwise you'll get an email reminding you to do so. But yes, feel free to wander around. The other thing, of course, is you can just ask for directions. I mean, there's some idiosyncrasies of some of the architecture, but I find that people tend to figure out where they're going fairly quickly and easily.
And just so you know, too, our office will be opening back up next week. We'll be open Monday, Wednesday, Friday for a couple of weeks, and then we'll be back to Monday to Friday from, I forget my office hours. It's been so long, 10 to 4, 9 to 4, but we'll be there like most of the day, starting in 2 weeks, but next week and the week after, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So you can always pop in and we can give you directions as well.
Besides Suresh, just wondering if there's a specific orientation.
Yeah, so that's the one that I mentioned at the beginning, Suresh, that we're trying to finalize. There's definitely is going to be one for the Durham campus, which will be for our Master of Management students. The hope right now is that that's next Monday. I know that's coming up close, but I'm hoping to be able to confirm that today. So the details will be on our orientation website as soon as I know them, and a specific email will go out to the Master of Management students as well, so that you don't miss that. Okay. Hopefully soon, today or tomorrow, we'll confirm.
Sorry, I'm just
Yeah.
pulling up the link for the screening app.
You just putting that in the chat?
Yeah, in the Q&A.
Okay.
So it's trentu.ca/screen. Fairly easy to find.
Oh, there you go. It's easy.
So, okay. Well, thank you all for attending, and my wish for you is that you have a really wonderful time at, and that any problems become are small, manageable problems, and that you really feel deeply fulfilled. I think one of the things sometimes in these sessions is we're focusing so much on services and supports and what could go wrong that we forget to talk about what could go right and what will hopefully go right. I think for graduate students in particular, the learning and becoming the expert in your subject and be sort of really digging into the academics in the detail that you wouldn't have it in undergrad, it can be really, really empowering and fun. Ideally, feeling a lot of excitement and passion for academics, and that you're going to develop that strong connection, both academically and socially, that you'll have some great skills development that will sort of serve you well throughout the rest of your lives, and that you'll feel deeply fulfilled with the work that you're doing. So I'm hopeful that all of those things are true for each of you. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you in person at some point soon. The best of luck in the upcoming year. Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much, Nona. That was great. And yeah, and just to reiterate what Nona had already said, please drop by and ask us questions anytime too. When we're in the office, we're in the back of Blackburn Hall. So always ask questions. If you have any questions at all, we're here for you. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Hopefully we'll see you Tuesday, Thursday for our next orientation session. And as I said, this is recorded and I'll send it out to everybody and it will be on our website. Have a great day.
Take care, everyone. Bye.